Tomorrow will be the start of the second week of the NFL. And depending on your point of view, either no one is watching the NFL or everyone is watching the NFL.
Oh, God.
I love this.
Wow.
Like everything else in this society, the discourse around NFL viewership, of course, lacks nuance, especially when the data tells two different stories. This has been so fun for me to watch as a person in the media, as a fan of football, as an observer of society patterns, things like that. But here, I'll give you the conclusion, and then we'll give you the breakdown, the way it's being spun. What we know after week one is nothing. We don't know anything. However, people on one side of the spectrum are claiming, yes, we do. We know that people wouldn't watch the NFL because all the social justice stuff. They wouldn't even tune in. Now, those of us that watched it almost universally said, you didn't really notice it. It doesn't interfere with the game. They kind of pack everything into the pregame shows, etc. But the assertion is, but the NFL, they went too far. All these athletes, they went too far. Boycott the NBA. And there's a narrative. We were talking yesterday on the air about something. Dawn was making a foolish point, and I pointed out to her.
Shut up.
That
it's your birthday.
all numbers, all statistics can be twisted. And so that's what both sides are doing. The other side is saying, look at these numbers. Not only are people not protesting the NFL, they're embracing the fact that they are finally waking up to social inequality. And then, of course, there's the third possibility, that America just loves its football.
Yeah.
But that would also be counter to the first argument. So here's where this comes from. Last Thursday's, and by the way, I have a little bit of nuance to explain all of these things, I believe. Last Thursday's NFL kickoff, the big Thursday night game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans, marked a 16% drop in viewership compared to 2019. Same game, first game, Thursday night, 16% fewer people watched last Thursday's game. But wait, Sunday's ratings were through the roof, including Tom Brady's debut with the Buccaneers, which was a rating success and a 4-year high for the very first NFL game of the week for Fox.
Wow.
So, oh my God, they plummet on Thursday because nobody wants to watch that crap. But they sat in front of their TVs all day Sunday and they watched the NFL until, Sunday night. Rams and Cowboys was down from the previous year. So you see how you can spin it?
Yeah.
Now,
easily.
I have a few possible explanations, although in the end, I think we still don't know anything that's going on. There's a big difference between the Thursday night and Sunday night games and all of Sunday in terms of presentation. When one game is on display, Thursday night football, Sunday night football, if you tune in like at 5 o'clock Pacific time for the game that's around 5:20, you do get inundated with the social justice stuff because they've got it all in the pregame and it's the only game on. And it's possible that people tuned in and saw a few minutes of that and said, I'm out. It's possible. I will give you that it's possible. I'm not saying for certain. The other thing to consider, too, is a football thing. Chiefs-Texans, that's a terrible game.
Is it? Okay.
That was a terrible opening game. And it was a terrible game as well. Nobody expected it to be a good game. It was also a boring game. Rams-Cowboys, you can't really explain away that way. There's really no explanation for that. But then you have a whole Sunday of everybody watching football.
See, and it might be, again, who knows, it might be also to add in, they heard so much about what it was going to be that they just didn't even want to tune in and see it because, quite honestly, the way you reported it, I thought we were going to see it throughout the whole game, from start to end. So there might have been some people that are like, I don't want that. And then maybe they heard, it wasn't that bad, so they tuned into whatever the other game was.
And maybe Sunday night it's just as simple as they were all drunk and passed out. Now, here's the statistic that really throws a wrench in the America hates the NFL for its social justice thing. If it's all about they're mad and they don't want to have anything to do with the NFL, then why is it that NFL team apparel and merchandise is booming and setting records compared to the last 10 years? If you hate the NFL, if you hate the players, if you hate the teams, if you hate the social justice crap, how in the world is the NFL setting records in 1 week in merchandise sales?
You know what I think this is? I think, again, this is the fringe on both sides trying to create some narrative. It's more popular. It's not popular at all. Where the middle ground, everyone's they just like football. They just, and that right there, they're buying their gear and they just like football. The rest of you are trying to make it a thing. on either side, where everyone else is just like, give me football, give me some normalcy. I don't have time for this crap. Because listen, the majority of people don't. They just don't.
And not only do they not have time for it, when the one time they don't want to make time for it is in sports, and if they found out or they heard it's really not that intrusive, they're like, this is fine. And that was my experience throughout the whole day Sunday.
And I think that's what's maddening for fringe groups on either side. They want it to be something, whatever theirs is,
which
for
is why
everyone. And through their prisms, I think they think it is.
They do.
And they don't. The fringe, to me, they just don't represent America on either side. You do not represent America. You don't.
They're Twitter. Look, that's why they scream so loudly.
Yeah.
14% of the entire population of America has ever, that's the high watermark, been on Twitter.
Jeez.
But Twitter ruins lives endlessly and gets picked up by the rest of the media because Twitter is basically populated by the media, entertainers, politicians, and idiots.
And they make it seem like everyone's on Twitter.
Yes, of course. Yes. Look, believe me, has 2020 not proven more than any other year? I get it. Facts don't matter. No one ever talks about that, do they? No one ever talks about that. The Twitter has never had more than 14% of the population. I don't know what it is currently, but it's not that to be part of it. But you're right. It's, oh my God, if something's trending on Twitter, it's the most important thing in the world.
Deal. And where are you? Why aren't you a part of it? Hey, if you feel it, it's a fact.
One of the things I've been asserting over the last few months is what will bring us out of COVID in terms of living with the virus will be capitalism. It won't happen fast enough for most of us. But eventually there's going to be people who are literally dying on the vine financially, et cetera. And you are seeing that. You are seeing that, and I think what's getting more and more maddening, remember in the beginning what was so maddening was, wait a minute, how come people can walk into grocery stores, but they can't walk into my mom and pop store where I can actually control a lot of this stuff? Now, as it's gone, and so it felt like big business, big corporations were being favored. Now, a lot of people are starting to look around going, wait a minute, all of these sports leagues are figuring out ways to make money. Why can't I in whatever my business is? Mm-hmm. And now you're seeing it happen right within the NFL. On opening weekend, only 2 NFL teams had stadiums for week 1, both around 16,000. That was the Chiefs and the Jaguars. Over the next 2 weeks, 6 other teams have announced they will allow fans in the stands.
Nice.
And, of course, the reason is money. Yeah. According to Forbes, the Dallas Cowboys lose $77 million per game if they don't have fans.
What? Oh, my God. What? No.
The Patriots lose $40 million per game.
I can't even comprehend that. Holy cow!
This is unsustainable.
Exactly. Which is why, and so the big thing now is some teams play in some states or some areas where local restrictions legally don't allow. The Raiders cannot say that they want to have home because in Nevada the law is still restricting 50 people or less or whatever the hell it is. But where they can. Some teams this weekend for week 2. The Browns will allow up to 6,000 fans, which is great because that's all they have. The Miami Dolphins will have 13,000 people. The Colts will have 2,500, better than nothing. Cowboys will have spectators, but we don't know the exact number yet. So 6 teams total and then 2 more the following week.
Oh, my God. I feel like some people hear those numbers and they think it's absurd the amount of money that gets spent on football and sports when they're not realizing those are lives. Those are, I don't even know how many countless livelihoods that benefit from that money. And that is devastating. I don't even know how these towns are still open, missing out on that.
A lot of them aren't.
I mean, are you kidding me?
Or a lot of them are just literally clinging. And that's why in a lot of these cases, that's one of the things that drives some of these teams. It's not just, oh my God, we're losing out on this money. It's there is a point at which you don't want to look around your stadium, your surrounding area, and have it become dilapidated because that's bad for future years.
Oh, yes.
If in really big cities, they've done a really good job in most cities that have baseball and football stadiums. They're surrounded by, in most places, bars, restaurants, places to congregate. As those all shutter, it turns into the hood. It turns into something awful, something people don't want to walk through to get to the game next year.
Yep.
And that is something they take into account. And it's something that the Big Ten Conference took into account as they reversed their decision to postpone fall sports until the spring of 2021, and they are going to play college football beginning October 23rd. As we told you yesterday, for those of you who don't know, that means big-time schools like Ohio State. Sorry, the Ohio State. Penn State, Michigan. And they did so after facing intense pressure from coaches, players, parents, and fans, all of whom wanted to play this fall. We discussed this a little bit yesterday. So in other words, what the Big Ten did was they listened to their constituents. They listened to the very people, their own players, their own coaches, the parents that are paying for tuition, their fans, and they said, okay, we're going to figure out a way to do this. And they've got all these dopey safety protocols in place, et cetera, that they have to have for PR purposes. But we remind you, again, that 99.1% of all COVID deaths in America have been people 35 and over. And for people between the age of 35 and 54 that have died of COVID-19, 99.28% of them had underlying conditions. And there has not been one college football player with all of these outbreaks that has even wound up in the hospital yet. But despite that, the world set its hair on fire yesterday with editorials like this one from Christine Brennan, who is a piece of work, let me tell you. Wednesday was the darkest day in Big Ten sports history.
The darkest day.
Just as the Big Ten was looking smarter by the day while other conferences playing football announced soaring cases, the league's presidents reversed themselves and decided to steer their schools and their football programs right into the teeth of what are predicted to be the worst days of the pandemic in October and November.
Oh, God.
Hopefully no one will get sick or spread COVID to others. We'll see.
Hopefully no one will get sick. Now you're freaked out about getting sick?
Yep.
Okay, first of all, nobody likes to be sick. It sucks. But when she just says sick, that means, sick, and then I get over it and I move on with my life like we do all the time.
Well,
and most have with COVID.
We used to do that all the time. Some of the most famous moments in sports history. What we now know was not really the flu, but the Michael Jordan flu game when he played one of the best games of his life. Turns out it was actually food poisoning. But either way, he felt sick. He got up and did his job like the rest of us used to do. But now just getting sick is what we're all afraid.
You know what I noticed?
It's maddening.
I went to the grocery store yesterday, and I was in the parking lot for about 30 minutes talking to my sister-in-law, and I am watching. This is the thing that was maddening to me. The last time I had been there, no one at this particular store was walking in with masks, and no one was walking out with them. So you're thinking they're taking them off inside. This time, as I'm sitting there, every single person that's getting out of their car just about is taking the mask out of wherever they have it, their purse, their pocket. But the other thing...
How sanitary.
I know, right? But here's the other thing I noticed. I would say 99% of the people, because in that half hour, that were walking out, because there's only one way to get in and out of this particular store now. I don't know why they close off. What does that have to do with COVID? Closing off one of the entrances.
They're controlling the flow of COVID.
That's the answer.
So stupid.
COVID gives them one entrance.
Yeah, they only work on one-way streets.
COVID has an agreement. We won't do this door.
But here's the sad thing, is that the majority of them, as they walked out, they're like ripping it off. Like they hated every moment of it. But we're so forced that we have to... People are complying. They see the sign. That's great, I guess. But we're all, though it seemed anyway at that store, the majority of people were hating every minute of it.
Of course.
And it's, look, God.
We had this discussion yesterday about you like you usually do. You spoke in superlatives, and I had to correct you. You said no one likes wearing the mask, and I pointed out, well, wait a minute, the virtue signalers, they genuinely enjoy it, but the rest of them, the rest of normal people, do not like their mouths and noses being covered. And we are now somewhere between, depending on how long and where you are, between 4 and 6 months of covering our faces. Never mind all that we've talked about with the side effects, which the dental industry is screaming, and no one's giving them any time. I've got their stories. We just don't have time to get into all of this stuff. The dental industry is screaming about the effect of all of us wearing masks. Doesn't matter, because COVID is the only thing now that kills us. But even if you're not going to the dentist or feeling those effects, you're tired of it. People are tired of it. And so that angst that you're seeing, I realize it's anecdotal, one store, one girl, one place, but you know that's spreading, and it's going to lead to more angst, more anger, and unfortunately, more confrontations of people on people, because everyone else is staying out of it. Law enforcement won't enforce it. All the corporations have said employees don't enforce it, which leaves it to the Karens and the Bryans to enforce it on the rest of us.
As I was walking in the store.
Great.
As I'm walking up, there's like 3 people, but not together. Individually, they're like one comes out, then another, then another. The first woman that comes I wasn't even close yet, but I could hear her. Her groin was so...
Her groin? What about her groin?
You could hear it?
My God, she needs to see a proctologist.
Was it actually grating?
You could hear the grating groin. Wow.
She groaned
Oh.
so loud. She was so mad. She like ripped that thing off. It was just like, ah! And the other 2 like that would come out after, they're just, ugh. You just hear like the sigh about it. And honestly, I was planning on taking it off because my husband's been in that particular store and he says at least him and one other person aren't. No one says anything. But when I walked in, there was not a soul without one. And I didn't want to be that jerk because I know my sister-in-law and I have talked about this. She's like, I get mad. She's like, I hate the mask. And when I'm in a store and someone doesn't have theirs on, I'm like, hey, what makes you so special? We all got to wear one and we all hate it. It's like her mindset. So I'm like, well, I don't want to be that only jerk.